This leads us right into monitoring under good clinical practice. So, what is the monitor expectations? Everyone is responsible for following GCP guidelines, including monitors. Monitors have a big role in making sure that sites are producing quality data and recording it appropriately as required by GCP guidelines. So we've discussed this a few times already, going through the principles, but GCP is everybody on the study needs to follow GCP. They need to be trained on GCP. Their certifications need to be current. Usually it's every year, sometime every 2 years, depends on the site and the SOP, and also depends on, quite frankly, on the sponsor expectations. If the sponsor prefers sites do GCP training every year, then that's what they should put into the plan, the monitoring plan. Monitors also are responsible for following good clinical practice guidelines. And monitors have a big role in making sure that sites are producing quality data and recording it appropriately. So this is, at the end of the day, what a study is data. It's nothing else but data. So that's the deliverable. That's the final product that the sponsor gives to the FDA is data. And this data was captured from investigators who are following the protocol at their sites. And this is verified by monitors who make sure that the data is quality, there's quality control there, and that all GCP and protocol guidelines are being followed. All of them. Okay, so section 5.18.1 specifically talks about monitoring. So the purpose states that the purpose of trial monitoring is to verify that the rights and well-being of human subjects are protected, and that the reported trial data are accurate, complete, and verifiable from source documents, and the conduct of the trial is in compliance with currently approved protocol and amendments with GCP and with applicable regulatory requirements. So remember when I said GCP is like the umbrella and the protocol is like a person standing underneath the umbrella. Okay, that's a good way to think of it. GCP needs to override everything. And section A here says the rights and well-beings of human subjects are protected. This is the primary purpose of trial monitoring, is that the rights and well-being of human subjects are protected. Now, this may seem like it's obvious, but the monitor really have to know the protocol and really have to understand GCP, because sometimes the sites are busy and they don't double check as they should, and maybe there's a excluded medication that is excluded by the sponsor for a reason, because it's a dangerous contraindication, and maybe the site overlooked it, and now you have the well-being of that subject in jeopardy, and the last line of defense is the monitor. And so mistakes happen. PIs overlook things, coordinators overlook things. That's why we need monitors. They're the defense. If this is like a sports analogy, the site would be the offense. They're also supposed to play defense, but usually sites play more offense than defense. Monitors are 100% defense. Okay, so these things become real very quickly. The monitor, in accordance with the sponsor's requirements, should ensure that the trial is conducted and documented properly by carrying out the following activities when relevant and necessary to the trial and the trial site. So what are these things? Number one, acting as the main line of communication between the sponsor and the investigator. It's not so common for the sponsor to have direct communication with the investigator, maybe initially, but throughout the course of the study, that role, that line of communication is the CRA. Also verifying that the investigator has adequate qualifications and resources, and that these remain adequate throughout the trial period. That facilities, including laboratories and equipment and staff, are adequate to safely and properly conduct the trial and remain adequate throughout the trial period. verifying for the investigational product. So you're going to verify that storage times and conditions are acceptable and that supplies are sufficient throughout the trial. You're also going to verify that the investigational products are supplied only to subjects who are eligible to receive it and at the protocol specified doses. There's really essentially only three things the CRAs look at. It's source data, it's regulatory, and it's investigational product. And the investigational product is really the main place where subject safety needs to be the number one priority. So section 3 here, subjects are provided with necessary instruction on properly using, handling, storing, and returning the IP. Remember, monitors don't interact with subjects. So the monitors have to ensure that the sites are doing this. And if the sites are not doing this or not documenting this, because not documenting and not doing in research is the same thing. If it's not documented, it didn't happen, is the rule in research, which I completely agree with. And so the monitor's role is to just have these conversations, sometimes difficult conversations, with the site. Number 4, that the receipt, use, and return of the IPs at the trial sites are controlled and documented adequately. Number 5, that the disposition of unused IPs at the trial sites complies with applicable regulatory requirements and is in accordance with the sponsor. Section D, verifying that the investigator follows the protocol and all approved amendments. This is important because protocols get amended on average 3 times per study. And section I, verifying that the investigator is enrolling only eligible subjects. This is the example of the contraindicated medication I brought up earlier. There's a reason for having inclusion-exclusion criteria, and usually it's safety reasons. And so you're making sure that the investigator is only enrolling eligible subjects. As a monitor, you don't just assume because the investigator did something that it must be correct. You have to look at GCP. Remember, like the umbrella, look at GCP and look at the protocol underneath the GCP. Then the monitor is also responsible for reporting subject recruitment rates and verifying that source documents and other trial records are accurate, complete, kept up to date, and maintained. Finally, verifying that the investigator provides all the required reports, notifications, applications, and submissions, and that these documents are accurate, complete, timely, legible, dated, and identify the trial. And this is where I bring in the ALCOA acronym, ALCOAC, which is attributable, legible, contemporaneous, original, accurate, and complete. And that is what good documentation practices are so important. Dose, therapy modifications, these need to be well documented for subjects. Adverse events for subjects need to be well documented. Concomitant medications, intercurrent illnesses, medical history, these all need to be reported and documented properly in the source and in the case report form. Any missed visits that the subjects fail to make, tests that are, assessments that are not conducted, examinations that are not performed, these need to be explained by the site. It has to be documented. Finally, subject withdrawals and dropouts of enrolled subjects from the trial, explained in the CRFs. Informing the investigator of any CRF entry error, omission, or illegibility. This is called source data verification. So the monitor should ensure that appropriate corrections, additions, or deletions are made, dated, explained, and initialed by the investigator or by a member of the investigator trial staff who is authorized to initial CRF changes for the investigator. It's usually a study coordinator who's doing these things, but the CRA is the one that needs to check all this. Source data verification. And determining whether all adverse events are appropriately reported within the time periods required by GCP, the protocol, the IRB, the sponsor. And that's, in a nutshell, as you can see, this is a lot,